Hello, thank you for those who are joining us. We hope we have some people out there. We're here with Invent Learning Hub, some of our staff members, and a few special guests to talk today about design thinking. My name is Alicia Osler, and I'm the Executive Director of Invent Learning Hub. We are a K-8 charter school on the southeast side of Indianapolis, focusing on design thinking, pathways, and personalized learning. So I want to take just a minute to get to know some of the people we have with us today in our live stream. We have 2 staff members and then we have 2 special guests. So let's start with our staff members first. If you'll introduce yourselves, tell us a little bit about how you're linked to our design thinking program.
I'll go first. I'm Gabriel Surface. I am the Director of Academics at Invent Learning Hub. This is not my normal haircut. I lost a bet to some first graders during this e-learning time, and they decided on a mohawk, so that's what you are seeing. I had a big hand last year in helping kind of design and get started our design thinking program, working on some of the early challenges and connections with community partners and things like that. So I oversee a lot of the academics here at ILH.
I'll go next. I'm Nina Roses. I am the design thinking teacher for ILH. So kindergarten through 5th, going into 7th next year. I'm the primary design thinking teacher and create the units with Mr. Surface and teach them.
Great. Thank you for introducing yourselves. We also have a couple special guests with us. We have a lot of people who are very passionate about the work that we're doing, both locally and worldwide. So we've, through my experience during my Mind Trust Fellowship while we were designing the school, I had the opportunity to connect with a local company, the Heritage Group, and Kierstin actually became one of our board members, and then connecting with David Lee, who is now in Singapore. So I would love to take a minute and just let them introduce themselves to you, the viewers out there. It looks like we have some people on now. We'll start with Kierstin.
My name's Kierstin Janik, as Alicia said. I work for the Heritage Group. The Heritage Group is a 90-year-old family-owned company based here in Indianapolis. We have over 30 companies under the Heritage Group umbrella. That includes environmental services, energy, oil, and then I work in our construction and materials business. That includes road and paving services, as well as asphalt and aggregate services. I work as the Chief Account Officer in that group. And as Alicia also mentioned, I am a board member for Invent Learning Hub.
Hi, my name is David Lee. I am currently in Singapore at Singapore American School. I am the Tech and Innovation Specialist in the elementary, so I support teachers with tech, but also design and engineering as well. I help develop units and implement them. I used to work in Korea at Korea International School, and that's where I started my design thinking journey. And that's how I got to connect with Gabe and Alicia. Maybe Alicia, you could tell the story of how we connected.
Yeah, so I was looking online, doing a lot of research around design thinking, and you know, in education, everything functions around standards. And I love the idea of there being some type of standards out there around teaching students around design thinking. And David had been developing these standards that were listed online and very open to the public. And it said on there that he would like feedback. So I just happened to get on there and make some comments and ask some questions about the work that he was doing. And that's how we connected, which is so strange that we connected that way. But the work that we've done together moving forward that's come out of that has been awesome. So thank you. I would love to just mention, you know, at our school, we do focus on design thinking, and I'd love to talk about why do we do that, because most schools out there are not focusing on design thinking. Many people don't even really realize what design thinking is. So when I stepped out to start running this school, we were really thinking around, we did not want this school model to solely be focused on state testing. I noticed that what was lacking in schools, and all you're doing is prepping for the test, was teaching kids to be innovative thinkers, to be problem solvers, to prototype things. If we look out in the world at all the people doing really amazing things, they've come up with new ideas, they've reinvented things, and we're not taking the time to teach those skills to our students. So I knew that we wanted that embedded in our curriculum. We wanted some type of problem solving process. So we looked at things like big picture learning, project-based learning. Project-based learning is probably one of the ones that people hear more about. But I actually started hearing about design thinking through a few school models. And what really stood out to me is that when students are designing or prototyping something, they're thinking through empathy first, through the lens of someone else's needs, which I really loved. In fact, I'm going to put this visual up at the bottom of the screen, which shows kind of the phases that students go through when they're working through design thinking process. So I want to leave that up on the screen for a little bit so we can maybe talk about the parts of it too. I would love to jump over and talk to Kierstin for a moment. Kierstin is coming from a company that actually uses design thinking as a practice within their facility. They have designated spaces in their facility to encourage design thinking. So do you mind sharing with us a little bit about how does the Heritage Group use design thinking within its company and some of the work that you've been doing?
Absolutely. Design thinking is something that probably in the last 5 years, the Heritage Group has really come around and has been using in a lot of different forms and fashions. Including, we have something that we call the center, having a number of different businesses. We have a facility that is really built with the design thinking process. They actually worked with IDEO to design the building with design thinking, with the idea that it would be encouraging people to use design thinking in the way that they think and innovate in our company as well. So we've actually even used it to structurally build things, to very intentionally have people be using design thinking in their work. We also use design thinking in our development programs and trainings that we have for employees as well, where we very thoughtfully do training and have employees do design thinking projects so that they understand and can take those concepts into their day-to-day learning as well. I think we have a lot of examples of how employees have used that to innovate and do different things, and it's not at all uncommon to walk by one of our meeting rooms, and we have a very open space that you can often see in meeting rooms and see sticky notes up on the wall, brainstorming sessions going on, or walk into our lab and see prototyping going on, and the reiteration process in our research group as well. So there's lots of examples, and we even have some companies and products and things that have come out of kind of this whole mindset around design thinking. I think that that's something we really try to teach people, that there's this process, right? And you have the process up on the screen here, but it's very much a mindset, right? You can use pieces and parts of the process as you try to solve for problems as well. You know, I'll just tell one story about one of the companies that has used design thinking in a very tangible and visible way to solve for a problem. We have the largest privately held environmental services company in the country, and it's called Heritage Environmental Services. And when there was a huge oil spill in the Gulf a few years ago, they were not only volunteering time, but doing a lot of the cleanup work down there with the oil spill. And they had all of these oil-filled booms that they were putting out into the water and having, tons of them stack up, and they couldn't figure out what to do with them. And so they used a lot of design thinking concepts to figure out, how do we solve for this problem where we're solving for a problem with getting the oil and soaking that up, and then what do we do with that, right? So they actually partnered with Chevy, and they took those oil-filled booms and use a lot of brainstorming concepts from design thinking to prototype and come up with this pellet that could be used in plastic form and was used in the Chevy Volt bumpers. And Chevy was very interested in having recycled or reused materials in the Chevy Volt, just because of the fact that it's an electric vehicle, and really wanted it to be a fully recycled, if possible, vehicle. So they were able to come up with that idea and make that partnership with Chevy to come up with that pellet for the plastic bumper that they use. So I think there's a lot of very tangible value-added things that design thinking can help bring to a company to come up with solutions.
Yeah, I know I've been on maybe 7 or 8 tours of the Heritage Group, and there's something new every time we walk through. To see the way the company uses design thinking is absolutely amazing. To see that we can take recycled materials and make something else. So I'm going to ask you if you'll share my favorite. Do you mind sharing a little bit about were they the switchboards or the?
Yeah, I can share that too. So we, same company actually, our environmental services business, often is going in and taking care of waste product from manufacturers. And they were taking back motherboards and chips from computers and electronic products. And again, trying to figure out what do we do with this? How do we take care of this? And we're always trying to figure out, can we make something out of this and find value out of these things that other people see as waste product. And so they ended up doing a lot of testing, a lot of reiterating, a lot of brainstorming and prototyping on getting the copper etchings off of these motherboards and chips. And it is a micronutrient that is needed by all, living animals and things. And they were able to find a process where they could safely etch that off of those motherboards and chips that they were getting from manufacturers as waste, and to repurpose it as a micronutrient in animal feed. And we ended up really growing that business for about 7 years. And we did end up selling it. It didn't quite fit in our portfolio and what we do. We're not really into animal feed and agriculture at the Heritage Group, but we were really able to get a startup business and cultivate that business out of an idea. We used a lot of design thinking concepts to solve a problem for. And we sold that about 2 years ago to a company that is in that space, in the animal feed and agricultural space. So there's a lot of opportunities with things that we are doing in our current day-to-day business, that we're using these to create startups, create new products, and that was a great success story for us as well.
So when we met, one of the reasons that we met is we were really trying to think through as a school, if we're preparing students for post-secondary, what skills are companies looking for, what mindset, and we help that really to build a lot of what we do at Invent Learning Hub. As a director of HR, and knowing that design thinking is a big part of what you do at the Heritage Group, what skills and mindset are you looking for as people kind of come to work at the Heritage Group that's different when somebody more understands design thinking?
Absolutely. And one of the things you mentioned that's really, really important to us at the Heritage Group, not only from a problem solving and facing challenges perspective, but also from a leadership perspective, is the empathy piece. Empathy is a huge part of EQ. And if you do any research or any reading on EQ, it is a huge piece of people being successful in the workplace, and being able to understand and put yourself in somebody else's shoe, whether it's a customer, maybe an employee on your team, a coworker, your boss. It's really important to be effective in the relationships that you have. People at the Heritage Group really value relationships, and EQ and empathy is a big piece of that as well. So I think the fact that design thinking is very rooted in empathizing with the customer, empathizing with others, teaches a very valuable skill set for young kids to bring into their life and into the workplace eventually, to be able to build that leadership skill, that people skill, as well as that skill in solving problems, right? And being able to empathize with the user, with the customer. I think another thing that it really kind of teaches children, or teaches anybody learning design thinking, is kind of this curiosity and open-mindedness. I think we're programmed as, we go through life to understand that you have a solution, you come up with it, you implement it. And that's not always the case, because we don't always know what the right solution is without investigating a little bit. And so I believe design thinking really roots in people that this curiosity mind and open-mindedness mindset of there might be other solutions and we need to investigate as well. The third thing that comes to mind for me is storytelling. And we actually have a space, and Alicia mentioned seeing some of our stories in our storytelling space at what we call the center. And storytelling is important, particularly at the Heritage Group, but I think in general as a work skill set, because you have to be able to tell a good story to sell an idea. You have to tell a good story to engage people. And I think the process of design thinking helps people to tell a story, tell why something has become the way it is. And so there's, to me, a lot of reasons why design thinking is bringing a skill set to people that are learning it that's really valuable to the workplace.
Thank you, Kierstin. So before we move on to the next person, I think this kind of speaks to what design thinking does and how it builds. The Heritage Group actually started as one individual company, and then now you are how many companies? Do you mind sharing that with us?
I've actually lost track myself, but we are, I think we actually have over 100 legal entities, but not all of those legal entities operate externally as brands. I would say we probably have getting close to 40 companies that kind of operate externally as brands. So we really, in 1930, started as kind of one man in a truck, if you will, actually delivering oil to maybe farmers or as home heating oil. Kind of an odd time to start in 1930 with the Great Depression at that time, but it's really expanded and grown over time with each generation. We're working on our fourth generation, and the concept of design thinking probably wasn't around in 1930, but I think they've always really had that mindset. So the fact that design thinking is something that we can teach to children, I think is amazing, because we've been doing it for a long time at the Heritage Group, but have never had a way to kind of package and teach it in a way. And I think that we're really grateful that we have that kind of as a curriculum now at the Heritage Group. But we've grown from kind of thinking of ideas of tangential things. So we were in the home heating oil business, and oil is related to asphalt, because asphalt is the bottom of the barrel of a crude barrel. And then we got into construction, because asphalt is used in construction, and aggregate is used in construction. And so we've kind of built on these tangential things. And then there was an issue with environmental gases and things. And so it was like, how can we help with that problem? And we created our environmental services business in the 70s. So it's always been this thought process of how do we solve a problem? And the closer you get to it, the more you get curious and try to solve for it. So it's been a very interesting story to learn about the Heritage Group in their 90 years. But again, I think it's something they've always kind of done, and the Heritage Group is just packaging it now using design thinking.
Thank you for sharing about that. Anyone that's able to go visit the Heritage Group should definitely do that. So we have David Lee with us, and David, we're exactly 12 hours apart, right? So you are early morning?
Yeah, it's yeah,
We haven't
almost
seen,
6 a.m.
we haven't seen you drinking coffee over there, so.
I haven't had time to make any, but I'm good.
Okay.
I'm excited. So.
Well, thanks for being with us. Do you mind sharing with us? I know when I think of the work that you're doing, I think that your school and the schools that you've worked at are really to like a point where we are striving to one day be at that point, because you've been doing this for a while. So do you mind telling us about what the work that's going on at your school, what your role is, and how you are implementing design thinking with your students?
Yeah, I would like to kind of mention how I started with design thinking. I So when I exited school, I would say my school career wasn't great. But once I entered the working field, I started, in my opinion, I kind of thrived, and I was just curious of why I was more successful in the career world than in school, and I quickly realized I was using skills that I think the schooling that I had didn't really focus on. And that is basically what you guys have been talking about, are the mindsets and then the learning processes of inquiry and curiosity, those type of things. And because I didn't have that structure, I was able to do some research, and I found design thinking, and I found that, like you guys said, it is a great package. It basically scaffolds for any beginner how to let yourself be creative, because everyone is creative, and really work out that creative muscle. And so once I learned about design thinking, I just went full on, because I just felt like this is what students need to really succeed in their future. And that was my goal from the start as a teacher. The students will get the knowledge and skills in college and those type of things, but the mindsets, the practices, those are the things that I wanted to help students work on. And so in my past school, in Korea International School, we created a program where we tried to integrate all subject areas through a meaningful project, and we provided them that real world context and setting, but then we use design thinking as the tool for students to navigate through that project and produce something that was creative. And it really changed the culture of the school. I would say it was very traditional before, but now it's quite different. The students speak in a different way. They're asking more questions, they're investigating more, and they understand that there's not one solution. And they get really excited about that idea of not just doing everyone doing the same exact thing. And currently, right now, I am more of a coaching. I have more of a coaching role, and so I help facilitate teachers in implementing design thinking as well into their units, but also help implement it. So I'm in the classroom, actually teaching students design thinking.
So I know that your school is well equipped. I've seen some of the pictures and some of the amazing things that you all are doing. Do you mind sharing like one of your favorite design thinking projects that you've done with your students and what that looked like?
Recently, I worked with the second grade class. Basically, design thinking will enhance any project that's already been out there. So when I was younger, I've done a museum project. And those were really fun. But thinking back on it, it was a bit service level, because design thinking, if you add that empathy part and that creative part, creativity and problem solving part, it really makes it more rich. For example, the students had to create a museum exhibit, which I've done in a diorama when I was younger. But students got to do empathy work. So they actually went to the museum and not only just observed and learned about history, they thought of the perspective of the curator. Why were they presenting this information? How are they presenting it? And they just found out that the curators were all trying to present information in a very simple, clear, and engaging way. Some of them using different senses. And they also looked at the exhibits and how they were interactive and stuff like that. So it gives another level for the project. So one of the students learned about the Great Wall of China and had produced artifacts for that. But to make it more immersive, they actually got some chairs and got some butcher paper and made it seem like you're walking on the Great Wall of China to the actual artifacts. And I thought that was a great way to present information instead of just their board with information like that. So yeah, I think design thinking enhances a lot of projects. And we are very well resourced. We have all the really cool toys, but like that example I gave you, that could be applied in any school really, so.
Well, I love that idea, and I think we need to steal that idea. We have some great museums in Indianapolis that we could work with. So after we started a conversation and started kind of communicating back and forth, Gabe and I actually did some research to try to find someone who could come in and train our staff on design thinking. And we were really struggling with that because no one really trains around design thinking. So you were one of the only people that we knew really doing the work out there. So we ended up bringing you in last summer with our staff, flying you here from Singapore. And the work that you did with our teachers was really great. We actually got to go to the Heritage Group and be in a space that felt really creative and felt right for learning about design thinking. Can you tell us, what did you see with the staff? What type of mindset were you seeing with our teachers, the projects that they were creating, and speak a little bit to that?
Yeah, so I was super excited because my ultimate goal is to design a school, and I thought it was an awesome opportunity for you guys to actually handpick these teachers. And I told Gabe, like, after the workshop, I was really excited for the school because it was very much intentional on who you guys hired. Yeah, design thinking is not a new thing. It's just really packaged, it's packaged well. So it seemed like a lot of the teachers already had those mindsets, which was really cool. Yeah, and so I wanted to make sure also that during the workshop, we had a distinction between project-based learning and design thinking as well, to show that the project-based learning is kind of what the teachers use. The teachers use it to develop that real world context, making sure that that context also hits standards, because that's extremely important. But then again, design thinking is the tool that students use. So it was cool to have teachers think about the real world context with the learning, but also get to experience what students would experience, because the teacher is the best model for design thinking. Because it is kind of the way you kind of live and do things.
Yeah, and actually, because our teachers did some really cool projects, I remember Nina's project being really cool. Do you remember what you came up with?
I do. I think the project was designing something for another member at our table that would help them with an issue that they have day to day. I worked with another teacher to make a portable like food carrying system, something along those lines, for someone for her to take to the grocery store, that had separate compartments for all the different foods that she normally buys. And it can also hook up to a bike if she wanted. So we made a small version of that, a small prototype.
It was awesome.
Thanks.
It was super cool.
I do remember it being really cool. I remember the person you designed it for saying they really wish they had one of those.
Yeah.
I would love to design it in full size because I would love one too.
Then you could go on Shark Tank.
Right?
Yeah, someday.
Yeah, so I know, David, that you're super passionate about design thinking, and I'm pretty amazed with the work that you've been doing. What is like your big goal or dream for the future with design thinking?
For me, I don't see myself as an expert. I'm learning constantly more about design thinking. Once you learn about it and then apply it all the time, you're constantly learning. So I think the next step for design thinking in education is definitely to go deeper. I think the book that I wrote is more surface level, and it helps not surface level, but it helps beginners start with design thinking in the classroom. But I think the next level would be to go deeper, I guess. Yeah.
And can I plug something for a second, Ms. Osler? You know, David mentioned his book. It is something that we gave to our teachers to get them started down that path. And also, you know, David is pretty humble with how he talks about his work. He has a treasure trove of resources on his website. Like Alicia mentioned at the beginning, that how they met was through his resources that he has on his website. And he actually has a video on his YouTube channel of our training and some of the work that we did. So we'll have to maybe link that on our Facebook as well for people to see the work that our teachers did to train with David. And then, wow, he just has so much information out there, and is always kind of pressing the envelope for design thinking, and thinking about, you know, new ways to advance kind of the field with how we introduce it to kids and to teachers and that sort of thing. So the humbleness comes through, David, but you do have a lot of expertise, and we've been really lucky to have you as a resource this year.
I appreciate that. But yeah, also this, I would also like to mention, maybe for the future of design thinking is also storytelling as well, like was mentioned before. And I don't know if educators have done a great job with storytelling, showing how immensely important and how beneficial design thinking is. And I think for me, that's what I want to work on, is to create that narrative, but make it just simple, and also evoke emotion, because kind of like a Apple commercial or something. Yeah, because I think a lot of people still have misconceptions on what design thinking is, and some people don't see the benefits. And I think that's really on myself and other educators who use it to share that story.
Yeah, when you're saying that, we say we don't want a school where the only thing we're doing is test prep. I think that tends to be the missing link, that we're not evoking any form of emotion when students are learning, and people who, want to learn more every day. That's because there was someone that has inspired them or caused them to be curious or want to learn. So, yeah. That's what it made me think of. And honestly, one of the centers of why we designed this new school model. So I will throw out there before we move on that today is actually the last day for enrollment, round 2 in Indianapolis with the Choice School Lottery. You can enroll at tinyurl.com/ILH enroll, or call the school. We'll help you out with that. But today's the final day of round 2 lottery. However, moving into May, we can get people signed up, but please reach out to us if you have interest or you have questions. And I'd love at this time to move on and talk to Gabe and Nina. Gabe is our director of academics. Nina is our teacher for our design thinking classroom, and her background is actually within art, teaching art, which art is a big piece of design thinking because our students prototype all of their ideas. They actually build. They don't just say what they want it to be. They actually build what they want that to look like and be. And some of the things that I've seen our students build this year have been amazing with very limited resources. I'm amazed at what we've been able to do, or our students have been able to do, with paper and cardboard and just leftover recycled items. I think one of the most exciting things that we did this year was a unit on how to make new things out of recycled items. And unfortunately, because of COVID-19, we didn't get to go to the market and sell those items. But our students came up with some amazing things. So would you like to start, you two just start by sharing some of the projects that our students have done this year, and how you came up with those projects, the community partners we've worked with?
Yeah, I'll go ahead and get us started. So all of our, and I won't talk a lot about our challenges. I'll let Nina talk some more specifics about those. But when we are considering what we want to do challenge-wise with our kids, I think it's important for everyone that these are based in our standards. So this is not just some random program that we've thrown into the mix. This is a way to embed the Indiana academic standards, the 21st century science standards, to really dive into what our students are required to know and think about how they can, A, learn them in a new environment, and B, show mastery in a new way. That product piece is a lot of what we forget about in education, is how can we help our students show mastery of a skill that's not just a test. And I think that was, Alicia mentioned that at the beginning. That was kind of one of the, the impetus for the school in this model was not being as test focused and giving our students an opportunity to show their mastery in a different way. So we do start with the science, social studies standards. We infuse those reading and math standards when necessary. And then we just kind of take a look at the standards and say, okay, what are some issues that our students are facing today, our community is facing today, our neighbors, are the people in this building, well, not my building, but our school building where we normally host school. But what are we facing? What are the challenges that that our students are going to encounter both today and tomorrow, and when they become adults and hit their careers. So that's kind of the driving force behind a lot of our challenges. And so I'll let Nina talk a little bit more about some of the challenges that the students took on this year and some of their solutions. And it was probably the most true form of joy that I've ever found in education, seeing these students share these solutions with their families, with their community members, with each other, with me, watching them talk about and just show off the craftsmanship, the thinking that they did, the empathy that they took on to create some of their solutions. So I'll let Nina talk some more about some of those specific challenges.
Yeah, so I think a couple of things that we did particularly well, or some things that I saw grow in students over the course of the year, was just creative thinking, just seeing the ease in like how students, were able to come up with new ideas and ideate and think of interesting solutions to problems we presented to them. I think that got easier for them over the course of the year. Drawing connections with careers and issues that we're currently facing, like like Mr. Surface mentioned, and just designing for others. I noticed, especially with our younger students, just kind of the shift in thinking about what do I want versus what do other people want, or what does the end user want. I did see a little bit of a shift in that throughout the course of the year. So a couple of examples for the younger grade levels. one of our design challenges was to create a toy for a friend. And so I paired students in the class, and they interviewed that other student, learned about what the student liked, what colors the student liked, what the student enjoyed playing with, and then created a toy that would fill that need for them. And that was kind of more towards the beginning of the year to really drive that empathy piece and thinking about what somebody else wants. So that was really fun and exciting to see. Another project we did was students worked as like a whole grade level team and worked in smaller teams within that to create a playground for the third graders. So the first grade and the second grade paired off into smaller groups, interviewed the third graders, and each team created one playground structure to fit in an overall playground. This we did entirely using entirely cardboard and glue, and let's see, what else do we use? Toothpicks, straws, all sorts of stuff. But it was kind of magical. Like they created these huge playgrounds that that third grade could kind of walk around and give feedback on. They chose a theme for the playground and were kind of able to talk about each their own individual piece that they made, but also the overall theme of the playground, which was pretty cool. And then the final project, or the last project that we did, actually came from an idea that Mr. Surface and I had just kind of talking in our kind of staff lounge co-working space area next to a recycling bin, just talking about all the things that we throw away. And what if we took all of the trash and all of the recycled materials that we throw away at the school and instead turn them into useful and marketable products? So the younger grade level actually worked with paper and created paper products out of all the recycled paper in our school, like notebooks, cards, bookmarks, all sorts of stuff. And the goal was to take those products and sell them at the farmer's market, and then use those funds to create, a huge party for them afterwards. Unfortunately, that didn't happen, but it was a cool project. And for the older grade levels, we did that project too, but expanded it to using metal, plastic, using other things that we recycled in the school. And they actually worked in teams to create their own product and created a product description, made a series of those products, and created a sales plan as well, and took professional photos of their work too. So we had like a binder ready for them to kind of show off their stuff. We worked on creating environments for an endangered animal, and created a unique instrument for a local band in Indianapolis. So sorry, I kind of talk a lot, but those are some of the things that we did. It was pretty great.
Yeah, I will point out that this crisis did cut short that challenge, and did cut short some more challenges that we had that were upcoming. But Ms. Roses has done a phenomenal job of, during our virtual learning, embedding design thinking into what she's doing with that as well, and making sure our students are still flexing that creative muscle, and doing that sort of thing as we've moved into this kind of weird time.
So we are a first-year school, so I think we've done some amazing work, but obviously it was the first year of our design thinking program. What do you think went really well this year, and what are the things that moving into next year you want to see us do even better?
I'll go first. So one thing that I think there are a lot of things that went really well. I think Ms. Roses was one thing that worked out really well for ILH and for our students. Having somebody with that creative mind and that design background really makes a big difference. It is not just a STEM program. We like to call it STEAM, which is, it's another word that gets thrown around in that realm, but it really does infuse that art piece. And our students, we really stretched their ability and their creativity and their ability to think creatively. And I think, we showed a lot of students things that they are capable of doing that otherwise they never would have ever thought about. And I think that's probably the best thing that we did this year, is build that kind of sense of self-efficacy in some of our kids to say, look, you designed a solution for a very difficult problem that people are still struggling with every day, that our community, adults, are still struggling with. And you found some really cool, creative ways to solve that problem. Even though you are a child, you have a voice, you have talents, and you have something in you that can make a change in your community, in your school, in your family. That sense of that you can do something to make the world that we're living in a better place was, I think, probably one of the proudest things one of the things I'm most proud of this year. I think, kind of thinking about what we can do better, I absolutely want to make sure that while, yes, we infused a lot of community partners this year, people like the Indie Chamber Band, who came in and talked to our kids about the instruments that they used during their instrument challenge. We spoke to a designer of habitats for the zoo, and our students got to find out, kind of like what David was talking about with the museum. Our students got to hear more about how they design habitats and the different things that you have to consider. They were really building empathy for those animals, and it wasn't just food and water. They were putting things in there that the animals could play with, things that might make it more fun for the people who go to the zoo and see the animals. They weren't just thinking about themselves and what they like to put in there. And then we talked to a couple different organizations, but I definitely think our community partnerships is something I want to strengthen next year. Looking at some of the challenges that we already have, Super Microgreens as an organization that we're already planning on working with. We have had conversations in the past with Rolls-Royce. One of our next challenges coming up is involving designing a community that is completely built off renewable energy resources and can sustain itself renewably. So working with organizations, hopefully like Indiana Solar, Johnson Mello, there's a couple great organizations here in Indianapolis that do that sort of work. The Heritage Group, bringing in some of our community partners really to strengthen and show our students these aren't just, fun challenges that we're going to put in front of you, but there are people who do this sort of thing for a living. This can be a career. And that's what, ILH is all about, preparing students for when they are no longer our students, because we can keep them safe and challenge them in our walls. But once they get outside of our walls, we want them to carry that with them. So those are a couple things that I would like to do better this year or next year.
I'd love to add on to that too. So I think, I think some of the things that went really well are that students, I saw students, especially some of our older students, start to draw connections between what we were doing in class and the world around them. So several times I heard, students talk about these issues, the issues that we were focusing on outside of class, or even mention things like, what they, how it influenced what they want to do when they grow up, and different things like that. So that was very exciting to see. And some of the things I'd love to see us kind of work on for next year. I totally agree with kind of expanding and strengthening community partnerships. I think that piece was great, but I'd love to see that happen even more. kind of have students develop portfolios of their work. And again, kind of that piece of preparing students for when they're no longer students, and just be able to have all the awesome work that they've done in a nice, tight, neat package that they can take with them and show off to others when they're, applying to other schools, or, to just kind of have at the ready with them.
And I think that, Nina, that's a really great point. I think that goes back to what Kierstin and David talked about with the storytelling. The more that we can do with our students to tell the story of design thinking, of the challenges that they created solutions to, giving them that avenue to tell that story to others will only help them build that confidence in themselves, but also to kind of spread the design thinking and show others what it actually is capable of when students are given that instruction.
So this hour always goes really quickly. So we have about 10 minutes left. I'd love to move into kind of a panel discussion. So anybody who wants to respond, just chiming in. I'd like to make it a little bit more relevant and talk about some things that are going on right now. So the first thing I would love to hear from everyone about is, we have a lot of local and world leaders that are making some really tough decisions right now around COVID-19. I think there's a lot of uncertainty. I know there definitely is a lot of uncertainty for educators and not knowing how we'll start the year next year. As these people are making these very important decisions and they're having to problem solve, how could design thinking and using that lens potentially impact the decisions that they're making?
I can say a few things on that. I think two things come to my mind, and I know I talked about empathy a lot, and I think empathy is a big piece of this, right? You've got a large population that have a lot of different perspectives and mindsets and lenses, and being able to understand the different angles and the different impacts this is having on the different populations out there is only going to help make better decisions. And so as much as our leaders, either locally or nationally or worldwide, can look at those different perspectives and get a more well-rounded perspective and being empathetic to each of those, I think that's only going to inform their decisions in a better way to help them make a better decision. Something else I think is the whole idea of reiterating, right? You try something, you might fail, and you make it better and you move forward. Everybody right now is learning. This is not a situation that we have faced before. It's unprecedented times. In my role as the Chief Talent Officer for our construction division at the Heritage Group, I had no plan for how to deal with a pandemic 6 weeks ago. And I've had to make one, right? And we've tried and we've, improved it, and we've moved on to doing something different where it made sense to. And so I think our leaders locally, nationally, and worldwide will have to do the same thing, because we are learning along the way. And so I hope they have that mindset of, trying, improving, and trying something else again, and reiterating that process.
I would also mention that design thinking is definitely a team sport. It's not just one person. So yeah, this situation is absolutely new, and it will require people to think divergently, try to think of as many different possibilities for solutions. And that will require, especially our leaders, to be more creative in the way they try to solve the problem.
I'm sorry. I was just going to throw out there that I'm noticing too, especially with our school and many of the school leaders in Indianapolis, that there's definitely inequity between schools in Center Township and other schools out there. And if you couldn't see those inequities, you can see them now, definitely in this situation, with families without internet, families without technology, or just situations in homes where it makes it very difficult for students to learn from home. So I think that's something that's really stood out to us. And that's something that as an educator, I'm hoping that our leaders, if they really truly are doing that divergent thinking, they're thinking of all different populations, and not just looking at education as a whole, because education is not the same everywhere. It is very different within different populations. So as you said that, I kind of made that connection to what we're seeing at our school.
Yeah.
Someone shared with me I don't know if it was really a poem or some kind of story, and we've heard a lot of, we're in the same boat, right? We're not really in the same boat, we're in the same storm. Everyone's boat is a little bit different. And I think we have to, and leaders have to be very cognizant of the fact that we're in the same storm. Not everyone's boat is the same, and not everyone has a boat. So I think it's very important, that empathy piece, and tying into your thought, there's a lot of inequities here in the situation we're dealing with.
Yeah, I'll add on to that. So one of the big pieces that that design thinking always makes me think of, and David has had a big hand in changing kind of my mindset in this, is that idea of the user experience, right? So when all of this happened, and we were told you're going to have to go virtual, our conversation in our organization was, what's the user experience? What are we going to provide to our families? That let's think about what they are encountering on a day-to-day basis, whether it's losing their job, whether it's multi-family households, whether it's having people in their household sick. There a lot of our families are experiencing a lot of different things very differently, like Kierstin pointed out as well. But what's the user experience? And we're starting to see that from a lot of businesses around our city, around our state, around our country. And I think our leaders can take a few notes from our local business people and look at, how are we still providing an important experience for our customers, which in our case is our kids, but for our community members. And when we think about, testing, when we think about social distancing, when we think about all of those pieces, how are people experiencing that, and how are they experiencing that differently? And so how can we think creatively to make those experiences, that journey that these people are going on, better? And that's what makes design thinking different from project-based learning, from all of those other kind of critical thinking frameworks, is empathy, and thinking about the user of the actual solution. And I think if we can just pin that on a wall somewhere so that our leaders have to look at it every single day, I think we'd all be in a better position.
So I am sorry we didn't get very far in our panel discussion, because I had a lot more great questions. But I would love to close with, it is that time of year where families are choosing schools for next year. Our enrollment link is scrolling across the bottom. I know we have an ILH board member, ILH staff members, and someone who's worked with us in training our teachers. What would you leave us with as far as why to choose Invent Learning Hub as an option for your child to be educated in Indianapolis?
I'll go first. So I think one thing that absolutely sets us apart is the building of the whole child, the consideration of the well-being of the whole child. Our goal, like I mentioned earlier, is not to have students who are expert test takers, who are experts in any real content area. We want our students to be problem solvers, creative. We want them to have self-efficacy, all of our attributes, which I could go through all of them, but we are building students, their confidence in themselves as people who can take on difficult challenges. And we do that through design thinking and through the infusion of design thinking through all content areas, math, ELA, science, social studies, all of that. And so, it's an education that is different than what you're going to get at a lot of places. We are one of the only schools that has this model in Indiana, and I just, it's if you want more for your students rather than just math and ELA. Our design thinking program, our pathways program, which we haven't even talked about today, which I'm sure we'll do a StreamYard for at some point. Those are great examples of what we do great.
I'll add too. I would say that we work, like all the staff and leadership all truly work together for the betterment and, more whole education of each individual student. We all work together nonstop to make sure that we provide the best education and really look at a problem or an issue from all sides.
I think a lot of times in education, you'll hear the word empowerment used a lot. And yes, knowledge is power, but I think ILH represents the true meaning of empowering students, because it's not only knowledge and skills, but it's the mindsets and truly self-efficacy. So my son is 3 and he's going to go to school soon. I don't think I could send my son to, I know he would still thrive in a traditional school, but I would prefer a school like ILH, because I do feel like he'll be more prepared for the future.
And I'll round this out. I've been tremendously impressed with Invent Learning Hub, and I've been working with Alicia, even as on the advisory board, as she was putting the concepts of this together. And coming from an employer perspective, where I mentioned emotional intelligence and empathy is such a critical component of being able to perform in the workplace, and being able to relate to other people and work with other people, but also to lead other people in the workplace. Adaptability and resiliency and creativity are such important components of someone being successful in the workplace. And no matter what setting it is, I work with executives to managers and engineers to account payables people to laborers. And these are things that are important in each of these types of roles, no matter what you're doing. And so the fact that through design thinking, they're teaching this, through their social emotional curriculum with Compass that they're teaching, as well as their pathways. I did not go to a school growing up that did any of this. And it's amazing that they're really focusing on the skill sets that kids were going to need in the workplace, not just the basics. And you don't find that everywhere. So on top of that, I think the staff is tremendously dedicated to the students, and that care factor is there. So I have been a huge supporter of what they're doing, and truly believe in it, and believe that it's preparing kids for the workplace.
Thank you so much. And I have to say that 5:30 in the morning and 5:30 in the evening is not a time that you want to be having an online meeting. So it just shows the passion that you all have for this and for design thinking. So thank you for joining us in our live stream, our second live stream. And we will come back with more of these live streams as we move forward. And we're going to go ahead and close out our broadcast. Thank you for everyone that was watching.